In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make this wave ring. Check it out. I'm starting with a piece of sterling silver round wire. This is 1.6mm in diameter, and the length of this is 30 centimeters, so this should be enough to make 5 rings. So I'm using my mandrel, the very pointy end, just to start shaping the end. Now start wrapping it around the mandrel. Now this is quite a small size, so what I'll do is once I've wrapped it around, I'll budge it up the mandrel until I get to the size I want, which I've not actually decided yet, but if you're making this for a customer, obviously you're going to get the finger size, but make sure that you make the rings at this stage a good few sizes smaller. And make sure it's overlapped. I'll aim to make this to size M, so the ring finished will be size M. Now what's going to happen is when I flatten these rings, it's also going to open the rings out slightly. I'll probably gain around about a size, maybe 2 sizes, so I'm just going to push it up to size K, and then I can do the final sizing once I've flattened them. So that's the coil. It's size K at this end and size K at this end here. So now I'm going to cut them apart to make the 5 rings. So if you use snips to do this, then it does distort the ends. That's why I'm cutting it. Now I'll overlap and line the ends up on each of the rings ready for soldering. I've cut 5 pieces of hard solder and just flux the joints. I'll use a solder pick just to make sure that the solder actually melts onto the joint and doesn't jump onto one side or the other. So you need to make sure you get the heat distribution correct. And it's just jumped over to one side, but I've still got the tail of the solder latched onto this side, so I'll just concentrate the heat on that side, and there we go. Now make sure that they're perfectly round. You don't have to worry about getting them perfectly flat just yet. And for each one, just make sure that you've got the same size. I'm working right on the edge of the flat stake, and I'm keeping my fingers as far away as possible. Just turn it and work my way around the ring, and I'll check to see what kind of size difference I've got. Okay, this has gone up just over 1 size, so if you're finding that you are striking your fingers, it does hurt a lot, so to be on the safe side you can use a little bit of masking tape to just hold the ring onto the stake. It's a bit fiddly though, and you have to keep turning it as you go, but at least it saves smashing your fingers up. So I've got the ring to 1.2 mil thick, and just check the other one, make sure I'm consistent. Yep, same. I might just flatten them a little bit more. I think around about 1.1 mil should be about right. Now I'm back on the mandrel. I'm going to use my chasing hammer this time just to make sure the rings are perfectly round. And this should budge them up a fraction more as well. Now emery finish the sides. So all the rings are flat and clean, ready for soldering, but I'm going to just find where each of the solder joints are, because I want to make sure they are all at the top. So if they're at the bottom where I'm going to be soldering them, and because of all the work I've done on the rings, the solder could sweat and the ring would just pull apart. So all the solder joints are going to be at the top. And now with the marks on top there, I can just put around about 15 mil area on both sides. Just paint the flux on. Making sure that the black marks all line up. And just bind the ring up. Do a little bit of binding wire. I'll put another loop of binding wire on the other side of the fluxed area. And I'll just repaint over with the flux, so you can see it's an area that's perhaps a little bit less than a third of the way around the ring, and there is a chance that the solder may run a bit further, but we're going to try and control it and keep it in this area. So I've pre-cut some pieces of medium solder, and we'll see if we need any more than that. I'll just you can actually run the solder in rather than place little pieces on, but if you do that, it's very easy to overdo it, and then you will have the solder running too far around the ring, and you won't get that the open design that I'm after. So the rings may open up a fraction as the flux starts to move around and dry. I'm just going to leave the little solder balls on the joints, and then I'll heat it up to the right temperature and allow the solder to run. Just need to get a bit more solder onto the end ring there. I don't think that's taken off. Now if you find that the solder is running further along one joint and not the one next to it, it won't really matter. We can have a staggered open split as the shank turns into the head of the ring. It can look a little bit more attractive that way, and I think that looks as though it's run. I'm not going to overheat it because then I know that the solder will take off and go too far around. So it looks as though it stopped at the point where the flux was stopped, so I'm going to allow that to cool, and I'll check to make sure that the solder's run on the underside as well. I can see that the solder has run on the inside, so I don't need to apply any more solder. So make sure that you remove the binding wire before you put it in the pickle. And I'm not going to file the top here because that's going to be shaped in a minute. I just want to establish the shank of the ring first. So that's made it a little bit thinner, but it is quite thick there for a ring anyway. I'm going to leave the as much of the thickness here on top of the ring as possible. So now I'm just going to tap it around and get the right shape. And I'll just use a penknife to open up the rings at the top. And just pull the two sides open, and then as you can see there's a lot of options now at this stage. So the design I'm going for with this is to have a random wave design. So there will be touching points in the middle here, and it will make it a lot more secure. To do that, I'm going to use these fine round nose pliers so I can get the wave started right at the end here. I'm working on the second ring here, and I'm using a levering action, so I'm not pinching the metal, I'm not squeezing it, I'm just holding the pliers at around about 3 or 4 mil apart at the end, and I'm just going to twist the pliers around like that, and it'll kick the metal over that way. So now I'll move along and get the pliers in the other direction, and then I'm going to twist the pliers down. This is going clockwise as I'm looking down now. So make sure that the one jaw is in the curved part of the wave there, and then kick it over like that. So now I've got a nice smooth bend in the metal there. So again, I get one of the jaws into the curve here, and the other one just a little bit further away, around about 3 or 4 mil, and again just give it a twist like that, and I'm gripping as I'm twisting, and that'll just help me to create that wave. Might take you a few minutes to get to grips with doing this, but you'll see that once you've done a couple, then it gets quite easy. And because it's random, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit you've got a soft curve on one and an angled curve on the other one. So just see how neat you can get it there. And I can encourage the metal to just come around a little bit more there and there. Now I've opted to keep the end rings dead flat, but you can actually curve those as well, totally up to you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't want to follow that pattern so that it just runs the same way. I'm going to try and go the opposite way. So I need to put my pliers in at this point here and twist anti-clockwise to kick the metal out there, like that, and do the opposite right next to it. Okay, that looks pretty good, and I'm starting to think that if I just had the 4 rings, then that would look really neat, and you could put settings into those gaps there, but that's not the case with this one. So to do the same thing for this one, making sure that I open the ring out where it's opened out here, so it's got a nice gap there that I can stick a setting in if I fancy. I have to just pull out the end ring so that I can get a curve going on down here. So now I'm just going to fiddle about with it to try and make it look a little bit more random rather than symmetrical. So you can see that one, I've just moved the curve down a little bit further there. Also need to make sure that I have got a few contact points to keep the top part together. So if I just run solder on this point here or that point there, I can just see a solder joint there, so I'll probably do it there, and then I can get a solder joint just here and then one here, and that will hold the ring together. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to put it onto my mandrel and give it a little bit of a tap, because I've got a little bit of a step there. So I don't want to be filing too much off and making it too thin, so I'll try and just level it off as much as I can on my mandrel. Just be very careful taps with my chasing hammer. That's opened it up a little bit, so I'll just get those contact points back again. just try and level it up a bit better with my half round pliers. That looks better. I mean, it might not look round when you look at it here, but once I've soldered it, I can work on getting the right shape. Okay, it's ready for soldering now. Just level that joint up there, and I'm going to solder all the contact points that I can find, and that will make it really nice and solid, and then I can work on getting the right shape. I just need to level this part up here. Okay, that's better. Okay, I'm going to be using medium solder again, and that will give me an option later to use another solder grade, use easy grade, if I decide to put settings in. So I could put little tube settings in there, which would look really cool. Okay, that should be nice and solid. So I'll pickle that, and then I can start cleaning it up. Just get one joint in there. Now I'll work on getting the top part of the ring into the right shape. So now I've got the inside of the ring nice and smooth, and for the top of the ring, the shank, once it's filed up, it's going to look like a solid shank, but when it comes to the separate pieces at the top here, I'm not going to file the whole thing flat. I quite like that undulating look of it. When you look this way, I want it a little bit up and down, so the natural contour that it's taken on now, I think looks good. So what I'll do is I'll just tidy up all the solder joints, and I'll emery clean it, and in some cases here I can see some dents where I twisted the pliers inside there, so I'll very carefully tidy up inside as well. I'll finish off cleaning up around the detail here with this brownie disc. This has worn down quite a lot. It started off like this. This is a greenie, and that's for the finishing. It'll take it up to a polish, but I'll just get rid of the tool marks with this first, and then swap over to the greenie. And once I've done this, I'll put it in a tumbler for a while, and then we'll take a look. And there we have it. And as you can imagine, with this technique, there's so many possibilities. Hope you enjoyed.